The car skidded on the rain-slicked road as I slammed the brakes, my heart pounding like a war drum. In the rearview mirror, I saw it, the figure standing, motionless in the storm, its silhouette distorted by the haze of falling rain. Then it moved, fast, too fast. Its glowing eyes locked onto mine through the glass, and the voice inside my head whispered coldly, "You shouldn't have stopped." My fingers tightened around the steering wheel as the realization hit me. I wasn't alone, not anymore, and whatever was out there, it wanted me. 2 days ago, I'd been just another face in the crowd, another guy trying to outrun his past. But then the letter arrived, a single page, torn from an old journal, with my sister's handwriting scrawled across it. "Find me. They're watching." She'd vanished without a trace 6 months ago, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and sleepless nights. The police had given up, chalking it up to a runaway case, but I knew better. Something had taken her, and now whatever it was had found me too. The figure outside tapped lightly on the window, its clawed hand leaving streaks of mud, and something darker. Blood. Before I could react, it lunged, slamming against the car with unnatural strength. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to act. Shifting into drive, I pressed down on the accelerator, tires spinning uselessly before catching traction. Mud splattered against the windshield as I sped away, narrowly avoiding the creature. But more took its place, their distorted forms closing in fast. "Help me!" The voice crackled again, louder this time, jolting me back to reality. Only now it wasn't coming from the radio. It was outside, right next to me. I glanced at the passenger side window. There, crouched low on the ground, was the source of the voice. It was a woman. Her soaked hair clung to her face in stringy strands, partially obscuring her features. Her clothes were torn and filthy, clinging to her gaunt frame like a second skin. But her eyes, they burned with an intensity that made me forget everything else. The storm, the creatures, even my own fear. "They're coming for you," she rasped, her lips barely moving. "You shouldn't have stopped." "Who?" I demanded, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound firm. "Who's coming?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed one trembling hand against the glass, leaving behind a smudged print streaked with mud and something darker. Blood. Before I could say anything else, she lunged to her feet and sprinted away, disappearing into the forest with unnatural speed. I stared after her, heart hammering in my chest. What the hell was going on? The forest swallowed her whole, or so it seemed. One moment she was there, her silhouette stark against the rain-soaked darkness, and the next, she vanished like smoke in the wind. I sat frozen, hands still gripping the wheel, staring at the spot where she'd been just seconds ago. But now it was gone, vanished into the shadows as quickly as it had appeared. The only evidence it had ever existed were the faint impressions left in the mud, a series of long, spindly footprints leading back toward the forest. "Who are you?" I whispered to myself, though I doubted anyone could hear me over the storm. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it raised one gloved hand and tapped lightly on the window. Tap, tap, tap. Each knock echoed like a gunshot in the confined space, shattering the fragile illusion of safety I'd clung to since pulling over. I couldn't see its face clearly through the fogged-up glass, but I could feel its gaze boring into me, unblinking, unwavering. Whatever it wanted, it wasn't going to leave without getting it. Outside, the storm raged on, lightning illuminating the landscape in brief flashes of electric blue. Each burst revealed snippets of the world beyond my windshield, twisted tree branches swaying violently, puddles rippling under the weight of falling rain, and, just for a split second, the silhouette of a figure standing motionless beside the driver's door. It wasn't the same creature I'd seen before. This one was shorter, hunched over, its face obscured beneath the hood of a tattered coat. Yet despite its smaller stature, there was something infinitely more unsettling about it. Its presence radiated malice, a tangible aura of dread that seeped through the metal frame of the car and crawled under my skin. "Who are you?" I whispered, clutching the steering wheel again, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to sound firm. The figure didn't respond. Instead, it raised one gloved hand and tapped lightly on the window. The creak came again, louder this time, unmistakable. It wasn't the wind or the settling of old wood. Something was moving inside the mill, deliberately and with purpose. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I swung the beam toward the source of the sound. Nothing moved, just shadows dancing across warped walls, cast by the flickering glow of my light. "You're not alone," the voice from the radio whispered again, startling me. This time it wasn't external. It was inside my head, clear and undeniable. I spun around, peering through the rear window into the abyss beyond. The headlights illuminated only fragments of the world. Jagged tree trunks slick with rain. Pools of water shimmering faintly under the intermittent flashes of lightning. For a heartbeat, everything seemed still, silent. And then I saw them. Shapes. Dozens of shapes emerging from the shadows at the edge of the tree line. They moved unnaturally, jerky, disjointed, as if their bodies weren't fully under their control. Their forms shifted and flickered in the dim light, making it hard to tell where one ended and another began. Some walked upright, others crawled on all fours, their limbs bending at impossible angles. All of them were heading straight for the car. "Oh, God," I muttered under my breath, clutching the steering wheel again. My palms were slick with sweat despite the cold seeping in through the cracks in the windows. The woman's warning echoed in my mind again. "They're coming for you." What did she mean? Who or what was she running from? The standing stones loomed above us, their surfaces slick with rain and glowing faintly in the storm-lit darkness. Each carving seemed alive, shifting subtly when viewed from the corner of my eye. The air around the circle hummed with energy, vibrating through my chest like the bass note of an ancient instrument. It was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a place where time and space felt malleable, fragile. "This is it," the woman repeated, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. She stepped toward the altar at the center of the circle, her movements deliberate yet strained. "We need to anchor the threads here. If we succeed, the balance will hold. For now." "For now?" I echoed, my voice sharp with frustration. "What does that even mean? Are you saying this isn't permanent?" "Nothing is permanent," she replied cryptically, her gaze fixed on the altar. "The threads are always shifting, always testing the limits of their connections. All we can do is stabilize them temporarily. After that," she trailed off, shaking her head. "After that, it's up to fate." Her words didn't comfort me. If anything, they made the weight of what I'd done feel even heavier. I glanced at the golden thread still glowing faintly in my hand. Its warmth had dimmed slightly, but it still pulsed with a steady rhythm, as though reminding me of its presence and its power. "What do I need to do?" I asked, stepping forward. "You'll know," she said softly. "When the time comes, you'll feel it." The silence in the cabin was deafening, broken only by the faint crackle of embers in the hearth and the sound of our labored breathing. The woman leaned heavily against the table, her hands trembling as she wiped sweat from her brow. Her face was pale, almost translucent, as though the events of the past hours had drained her to the core. I, on the other hand, felt hollow. The golden thread still pulsed faintly in my chest, but its warmth was dimmer now, more distant. It was as if part of me had been left behind in the chaos, sacrificed to stabilize the pattern I'd rewoven. The memory of my grandmother's stories, the one I'd given up, was gone completely, replaced by a void that ached with absence. "What happens now?" I asked finally, breaking the silence. My voice sounded foreign, detached, as though someone else had spoken the words. "Now," she said softly, pushing herself upright with visible effort. "We wait." "For what?" I pressed, frustration creeping into my tone. "Another attack? Another collapse? You keep saying the threads will test me again, but you haven't explained what that means." She hesitated, then sighed. "It means the balance isn't permanent. The threads are alive. They shift. They adapt. Every choice you make creates ripples, and those ripples can either strengthen the pattern or unravel it further. What you did back there," she gestured vaguely toward the doorway, where the shadows had retreated, "that bought us time, but it didn't fix anything. So we're just supposed to sit here and wait for the next disaster?" I snapped, anger bubbling over. That's your grand plan? It's not a plan, she replied sharply, her patience wearing thin. It's survival. You think I wanted any of this? You think I asked to be dragged into this mess? Number. But here we are. And unless you've got a better idea, we do what we have to do to stay alive. Her words hit me like a slap, silencing my protests. She was right. I didn't have a better idea. Hell, I barely understood what was happening. All I knew was that I'd somehow become a key player in a cosmic game I hadn't signed up for. Before I could dwell on those thoughts further, a low rumble shook the cabin. At first, I thought it was another aftershock from the void's collapse. But this was different, deeper, more ominous. The ground beneath us trembled violently, sending books and artifacts tumbling from the shelves. What's happening now? I shouted over the noise, bracing myself against the table. The threads are shifting, she replied grimly, her eyes darting toward the window. Outside, the forest was coming alive again, but not in the way it had before. The trees twisted unnaturally, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The air shimmered with heat waves, distorting the landscape into something surreal and nightmarish. And that means what exactly? I asked, my voice rising with panic. It means something, or someone, is pulling the threads from the other side, she said, her tone urgent. Something stronger than you. Before I could press her for more details, the door burst open with a deafening crash. Shadows poured into the cabin, twisting and writhing like living smoke. Their forms took shape, revealing grotesque figures, hunters, their eyes burning with hatred and hunger. They're inside, I shouted, backing away instinctively. Stay calm, the woman yelled, grabbing a dagger from the table. Its blade gleamed faintly, etched with the same symbols as the artifacts. Focus on the threads. Remember what you did at the Nexus. I closed my eyes, clutching the golden thread still pulsing in my chest. It was weaker now, its glow dimmer, but it responded to my touch, flaring slightly as I focused on it. Images flooded my mind again. Threads intertwining, patterns shifting, possibilities colliding. I saw the hunters, their connections to the void, their weaknesses, and I saw myself, standing at the center of it all, pulling the threads tighter, weaving them into a new pattern. With a final surge of effort, I yanked the thread. The world around me shattered like glass, fragments of reality collapsing into nothingness. The hunters dissolved into smoke, their forms unraveling completely, the shadows retreated, their hunger extinguished. And the void, it froze, suspended mid-surge, as though caught in a web of golden light. When the dust settled, the cabin was silent. The fire in the hearth had gone out, leaving only embers glowing faintly in the darkness. The woman stood beside me, her face pale but resolute. You did it, she whispered, her voice trembling with exhaustion. You rewove the pattern. But for how long? I asked, staring at the empty doorway. The forest beyond was eerily still, the storm replaced by an unnatural calm. For now, she replied softly, but the threads will test you again. They always do. The transition wasn't instantaneous. It was a gradual dissolution, like sand slipping through an hourglass. My consciousness expanded outward, stretching infinitely in all directions until I could no longer distinguish where I ended and the threads began. Each memory, each emotion, each fragment of identity unraveled into the tapestry of reality. I became everything and nothing all at once. At first it was overwhelming. The sheer volume of connections, the endless streams of lives intertwining and diverging, threatened to consume what little remained of my sense of self. Every heartbeat, every breath, every whispered word echoed through the threads, reverberating across time and space. It was beautiful, yes, but also suffocating. How could anyone or anything bear this weight? And yet, as moments passed, or perhaps eons, time had lost all meaning, I began to adapt. The threads weren't just burdens, they were lifelines, anchors that tethered existence together. Through them, I saw patterns emerge, cycles of creation and destruction, growth and decay, life and death. Each thread was unique, yet inseparable from the whole. Together they formed a delicate balance, fragile but enduring. But even in this state of omnipresence, questions lingered. Who or what had created the weaver? Was it truly bound by the same rules as the threads, Or did it exist outside them? And most importantly, was I alone? As I resumed my vigil, watching over the threads and maintaining the balance, I couldn't help but wonder, was this truly the end? Or was it merely a pause, a fleeting moment of stability before the next storm? The void still loomed, patient and insatiable, waiting for any misstep to consume everything. And somewhere beyond the threads, the weaver watched, its intentions as enigmatic as ever. For now I held the balance. But for how long? Before I could dwell further on these thoughts, whispers began to surface amidst the hum of the threads. At first they were faint, almost imperceptible, a murmur here, a sigh there. But as I focused on them, they grew clearer, more distinct. They weren't voices in the traditional sense. Rather, they were echoes of consciousness, fragments of beings who had come before me. Some sounded resigned, others defiant, but all carried a shared understanding. You are not the first anchor. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. Others had stood where I now stood, their essences woven into the fabric of reality long ago. Had they chosen this fate willingly, or had they been forced into it like me? Were they still aware, somewhere deep within the threads, watching silently as I took my place among them? I'm not alone, I murmured, or thought, or felt. Communication had become fluid, non-linear, a blend of intention and instinct. No, came the reply, a chorus of voices overlapping in harmony. But you are different. Different how? I asked, though I wasn't sure if the question was directed outward or inward. You carry choice, the voices answered, a spark of defiance, a refusal to accept inevitability. Their words resonated deeply, stirring something within me, or perhaps around me, that hadn't fully dissolved. A flicker of individuality remained, stubborn and unyielding, refusing to be subsumed entirely. It was small, insignificant compared to the vastness of the threads, but it persisted nonetheless. Could I resist? Could I reclaim myself, even partially, without unraveling the balance I'd sworn to protect? The idea was dangerous, reckless, but undeniably tempting. To exist as the anchor was to sacrifice everything, including free will. Yet part of me, the human part, clung to the notion of autonomy, however futile. I reached out with what remained of my awareness, probing the edges of the threads for any sign of separation. If I could isolate even a fragment of my essence, perhaps I could maintain some semblance of identity while still fulfilling my role. The moment I acted, the threads reacted violently. Patterns shifted erratically, their rhythms disrupted by my interference. Golden threads frayed, silver ones snapped, and black ones twisted into jagged knots. Across the expanse of stars, ripples spread outward, destabilizing regions of reality I couldn't fully comprehend. Stop! The voices cried, their unity fracturing into discord. You risk collapse. I can't do this forever, I replied, my defiance growing stronger. If I'm to hold the balance, I need something, anything. My plea went unanswered, drowned out by the chaos unfolding around me. Stars flickered and dimmed, galaxies collapsed into singularities, and entire timelines unraveled into nothingness. The void, the same force I'd fought so hard to contain, began seeping back in, feeding on the instability I'd created. Before the damage became irreversible, a new presence emerged. It wasn't the weaver, nor the voices, but something older, deeper, a force that existed beyond comprehension. Its arrival silenced the turmoil instantly, freezing the threads in place like a snapshot of eternity. Enough, it intoned, its voice resonating with infinite authority. You test the limits of your station, Anchor. I didn't ask for this, I shot back, anger flaring despite the futility of resistance. I didn't choose to give up everything. Choice is irrelevant, it replied coldly. Balance is paramount. And what about me, I demanded. What about what I want? For the first time, the presence hesitated. When it spoke again, its tone softened ever so slightly. Very well, it said. A compromise. With the agreement struck, the presence withdrew, leaving me suspended once again in the infinite expanse of stars. But something was different now. A small, flickering light pulsed faintly within the tapestry of threads. A fragment of my essence, separate yet connected. It was fragile, almost imperceptible, but it was mine. Through this fragment, I began to perceive reality in a new way. No longer was I merely a passive observer. I could feel the ebb and flow of lives intertwining, choices rippling outward, consequences shaping futures. Each thread carried its own story, its own struggles, and occasionally its own cries for help. At first, I hesitated to act, wary of overstepping the boundaries imposed upon me. But as I observed, I began to notice patterns of imbalance, threads fraying under the strain of despair, hatred, or fear. These were the moments when I intervened, weaving subtle reinforcements into the fabric of reality to prevent collapse. My actions were minuscule, almost imperceptible, but they made a difference. Lives were saved, relationships mended, tragedies averted. Yet with each intervention, I felt the pattern weaken slightly, the threads growing thinner and more fragile. The presence's warning echoed in my mind. Every intervention weakens the pattern. It was a constant reminder of the delicate balance I now upheld. Despite the isolation of my new existence, fragments of my humanity persisted. Memories of my past life surfaced occasionally, unbidden and bittersweet. I remembered the warmth of sunlight on my skin, the sound of laughter, the comfort of human connection. These sensations were fleeting, mere echoes compared to their former intensity. But they grounded me in ways I hadn't anticipated. Most vivid of all was the memory of the keeper, the woman who had sacrificed herself to save me. Her face appeared often in my thoughts, her voice lingering like a whisper in the void. She had known the cost of wielding the threads, yet she had chosen to fight alongside me anyway. Her courage reminded me why I had accepted this burden in the first place. "She believed in you," came a voice, one of the echoes from the threads. It was soft, almost hesitant, yet unmistakably familiar. "Who's there?" I asked, or thought, or felt. Communication remained fluid, non-linear. "It's me," the voice replied, "or what's left of me." The realization dawned slowly, painfully. The keeper hadn't been entirely consumed by the shadows. A fragment of her essence had survived, scattered across the threads like stardust. Now, drawn by the resonance of my own presence, she coalesced before me, a faint, translucent figure composed of shimmering light. "You shouldn't be here," I said softly, my voice tinged with guilt. "I failed to protect you." "No," she corrected gently. "You gave me purpose. Even in death, I'm still part of the pattern." Her words brought a measure of peace, but also a renewed sense of responsibility. If even fragments of those I'd lost could persist within the threads, then my role as the anchor was more vital than ever. I wasn't just sustaining reality. I was preserving the memories, the connections, the lives that defined it. As the keeper's form dissolved back into the threads, I turned my attention to the horizon, or what passed for one in this endless expanse. Stars flickered and dimmed, galaxies shifted and realigned, and threads unraveled and rewove themselves in an eternal dance of creation and destruction. My work was never-ending, my vigilance unwavering. Yet amidst the chaos, I found solace in the knowledge that I wasn't entirely alone. The keeper's echo remained, a silent companion in the void. And though my interventions were limited, they carried meaning, a testament to the resilience of life, the strength of connection, and the enduring power of choice. But deep down, I knew the struggle was far from over. The void still loomed, patient and insatiable, waiting for any misstep to consume everything. And somewhere beyond the threads, the weaver watched, its intentions as enigmatic as ever. For now, I held the balance. But for how long?